Welcome to NALA Talks, a microlearning series presented by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI Committee of NALA. My name is Kristine Custodio Suero, and I am the chair of the DEI Committee. The DEI Committee works to address diversity, equity, and inclusion to foster meaningful, open, and constructive dialogues throughout NALA, and to celebrate diversity of its members and leaders. Joining me today are NALA DEI Task Force member Juan Pablo Figueroa and NALA President Deb Overstreet. Today's conversation will focus on LGBTQ+ allyship. Our guest today is Siobhan Boyd-Nelson, who's the Deputy Director of Equality Ohio. We welcome Siobhan. Would you please share with us about your background, Siobhan?
Hi, Kristine, and thank you so much for having me here with you today. My name is Siobhan Boyd-Nelson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the interim co-executive director of Equality Ohio. I came to this position in 2018, and I started my work in the LGBTQ nonprofit sector back in 2012. I've had the opportunity to work with a number of organizations and sit on a number of LGBTQ service boards, and in doing so have learned a lot about our community and the ways in which we can serve that community best and make sure that we are doing our best to give them the services that they need.
Thanks, Siobhan, for sharing that. Would you please share a little bit more about Equality Ohio and specifically its legal clinic, and also how you got involved in this work?
Absolutely. So Equality Ohio is an organization that was born in 2005, and it was in response to a pretty big thing that happened in 2004, and that was Ohio's Defense of Marriage Act. And that passed overwhelmingly in the state of Ohio, and 65 advocates, members of the LGBT community, and allies got together in a church basement in Columbus, Ohio. And what they said was, never again will we allow other people to tell our stories and to paint a picture of us and our community and our lives that is untrue. They said that we needed to make sure that we had a voice in what was happening in Ohio. And that is how Equality Ohio was formed. And so for the past 19 years, we have been advocating and educating for the legal and lived equality of LGBTQ Ohioans. What I mean by legal and lived equality, it's legal equality, you probably understand that. It's, words on paper, the things that, the laws that make it illegal to discriminate against people just because of who they are. And that's great. Words on paper are great, but we recognize that those don't necessarily determine how people behave in everyday situations. And that's what we call lived equality. Lived equality is what it feels like to be a part of your community, how people treat you every single day, what it's like when you go to a parent-teacher conference or you go to the grocery store. Are you getting, funny looks? Are you made to feel uncomfortable or unsafe? That is the lived equality part. And Equality Ohio thinks that both are key for all of us to truly be equal in the state of Ohio. Back in when I joined the organization officially was back in 2018. That's when I became development director. But I actually started working with Equality Ohio a number of years before that. I was a volunteer. I used to phone bank. I went to their legislative advocacy days. And my wife and I were, in fact, part of the Why Marriage Matters campaign, which was prior to the Obergefell and Arthur decision, which made marriage equality the law of the land. But when I joined Equality Ohio in 2018, I joined at a time when we were building a new amazing thing, and that was the Equality Ohio Legal Clinic, which opened in 2019. So we spent the year of 2018 talking to the community and asking the community, what do you need? What kinds of legal services do you need? Where aren't you being served by the legal system? And based upon those surveys and the responses that we got, we built one of the only LGBTQ focused legal clinics in the country. And since that time, since opening our doors in 2019, we have served over 2,000 Ohioans with their legal issues, and that is by providing either resources, referrals, or direct legal representation in 8 different areas of law.
So Siobhan, what are some of the unique challenges the LGBTQ plus community faces within the legal system?
The legal system is one of those systems that simply wasn't built for marginalized communities. And what I mean by a marginalized community is a community that just isn't thought of, either because it's small or because society at the time doesn't like that community. The systems that we build don't take into consideration the needs of that community. And so that is essentially the LGBTQ community's relationship to the legal system. So what do I mean by marginalization and not taking into account the needs of the community? For example, one of the things that comes up a lot, especially in the legal clinic, is family law. Right now, the laws in most of our states and in the state of Ohio is written in a very cisgender heteronormative way, meaning that it assumes that all families are created with a one cisgender man and one cisgender woman. And that just isn't the reality of how families are created in this state. And when LGBTQ individuals avail themselves of other ways of creating families, the law doesn't make room for that in our statutes. And so what has to happen is that we have to come up with creative ways of ensuring that our families are stable and secure, and that their safety and financial security outside of the law. So for example, in Ohio, because we were women, lesbians, were creating families and either adopting children or maybe fostering or taking in family members or using donors to create families, and then some of those families would break up. And nothing in the laws of Ohio told people what to do when those families broke up. The laws were written such that the only adult who had a relationship or could have a relationship with those children post breakup was the biological parent. And that didn't recognize that the non-biological parent had a very real relationship with those children, and that the children could be harmed, and that it was in fact not in their best interest to not have that relationship with the non-biological parent. And so here in Ohio, I actually know the attorneys who created the shared parenting, the first shared parenting plans and documents in order to set up a system by which people who were of the same sex, and when there was a biological and a non-biological parent, could actually share a relationship or continue a relationship with that child, and that child could continue a relationship with their parent moving forward. So, that's just one example of the ways that the legal system simply isn't set up for our families. And that issue in the Ohio law about assuming that there's always one hetero cis male and one hetero cis female parent still hasn't been remedied, despite the fact that we have marriage equality in our country. In Ohio, the laws, all of the statutes still refer to one male and one female. There are a number of different things in our family law statutes that do not reflect even the reality of the law, let alone the reality of lived experiences that are actually happening. And that's one of the special, I wouldn't say specialty areas, but that's one of the areas where the Equality Ohio Legal Clinic really comes in handy, as well as our attorney referral network. And what I mean by that is that our attorneys have been able to work with families who are in very unique family creation situations and have been able to jump through the legal hoops and barriers in order to make sure that that family is legally recognized, and it has the stability that they need and deserve. And then we have an attorney referral network, and attorneys within that network across the state of Ohio are invited in to learn about these cases, to learn about these situations, and to learn more about how to help families like this and how to navigate those very real barriers to stability that they face.
Now, I completely understand what you're saying, and I actually seen the growth of it as a family law paralegal. In 2018, we probably had our first same-sex divorce after the marriage rights passed. And same thing, being one of the first ones, we had to modify documents being submitted to the court because of the wording and make sure they were aligned with what the law state. Then we came into now dealing with children within marriages, whether the children adopted or not adopted, what is the involvement of each parent, who's the biological parent. But it's gotten more complex with that. With the LGBT community, we've now grown into, and as a gay male, being part of the community, we see how now there's transitions where now you have the trans community. And as that develops, there's family nucleus that are involved within this now, where you're fighting with complex situations where the biological father is married to the biological mother, but he's a trans woman. And that becomes a factor within the legal system. Not only with that, when they go to find attorneys to assist them with these issues, they're having issues with attorneys wanting to take them and feeling like they're being treated in a manner different to anybody else because of who they are. How do you guys handle that within offering them services or referring them out to somebody who might be more familiar and empathetic with working with this type of community now that we're dealing within the family law sector?
Absolutely. I actually know of a situation that we actually helped someone with. And this was a person who was trans identified and living with a disability for over 10 years and did not seek out a divorce or a modification of a child support obligation because of the way that they had been treated by the legal system, by attorneys, and that fear of re-traumatization. So I want to step back for a second, since we're speaking specifically about the trans and non-binary community. The entire LGBTQ community is a population that the federal government recognized as a population that experiences trauma, period. As a result, and it isn't as a result of our identity, it is the way that society responds to LGBTQ identity. But because of that, LGBTQ individuals essentially will experience trauma in their lifetimes, and more trauma more frequently than our heterosexual or cisgender counterparts. So that's the baseline there. Then when we are looking at our trans and non-binary community members, they are experiencing trauma at an even higher rate. And trauma specifically within that community, you think about it as misgendering, dead naming, and just poor treatment with the way that someone presents, because the person that they are presenting to may not believe that they are presenting appropriately within gendered norms. And so it can be very scary for someone to choose to seek out legal help because they are concerned that someone from the legal system, a system which is not known for being progressive, let's be honest, a system that is very tied to the past and having a very specific way of doing things, there's good reason for trans and non-binary individuals to be weary of utilizing that system and utilizing those services. And so what we saw here was someone who had a child support obligation build up over 10 years, well into the 5 figures. And we were able to assist that person with actually getting the divorce that they needed and getting that child support arrearage removed. And that was because of our legal clinic and the way that we approach lawyering in our legal clinic, and that is trauma-informed lawyering. And what I mean by trauma-informed lawyering means that we recognize at the outset that the LGBTQ community is a traumatized population. And then what we aim to do is to not re-traumatize that person when they are working with us or working within the legal system. And in order to not re-traumatize someone, it may mean that you have to do things and take additional steps so that they don't have to come up against those things that you might be seeing in the office as a paralegal. So for example, if you have a family and you know that there is one or more trans-identified folks in that family, or that it's a same-sex couple, you might take the form and edit the form before they get there. Because just seeing a form that is created by the legal system and refuses to recognize the reality of your family, which is a same-sex family, is in fact traumatizing. And so taking even that small step of taking that form and not doing it with them or say, oh, we'll do it later, but making sure that that form properly recognizes and acknowledges their lived experience is one of the steps that you can take to make sure that you are not re-traumatizing that individual. Making sure that you are always, always, always using the name that the individual gives you. This can be a sticky one in the legal system, in the legal profession. What I always tell folks is that, sure, if someone hasn't legally changed their name, yes, you need their legal name because you have to know what to put on the documents. And there's no reason why that person can't be referred to within all of our systems by, what you might put as a nickname, but is actually their preferred name. And making sure that everyone knows that. And whenever that person is in the office, they are referred to by that appropriate name. And then it goes a step further. When you are working with opposing counsel, other law offices, when you're working with the court, there might have to be education. So you might have to educate your office about how to appropriately work with someone who is trans or non-binary or a same-sex couple. You might then need to do some educating of your colleagues and other legal offices. Our attorneys do a lot of educating of the court. You can't do this type of work. You can't advocate and represent LGBTQ clients without doing some type of educating of the court so that they're aware of why the system isn't working for them or what the needs are or what the real lived experiences are. So your non-binary, trans, or same-sex client might need you to correct opposing counsel or another paralegal from a different office if they are using someone's dead name or inappropriately or using inappropriate pronouns. But that is something, again, that can be traumatizing, but that you can do as a member of their legal team to be sure that they're not re-traumatized.
You mentioned the intake process, and you also mentioned, outside of the factor of the name, the factor of the pronouns. A lot of times, most of the intake processes start off through an email or through a call. And sometimes you can't identify because nowadays there's a lot of names that are actually gender neutral. So it's very hard to, and for the most part, our documents are very general basis. So it doesn't identify within sex, it just asks your general questions. But when you're responding to a person, sometimes you may accidentally say he or she without knowing. How do you go about correcting that to try to ensure that moving forward, they feel comfortable utilizing you and retaining your services?
Absolutely. So I would recommend that every intake form should always have an opportunity for someone to share their pronouns. When I joined and introduced myself, I said that my name is Siobhan and I use she, her pronouns. I did that so that you don't have to guess, so that you don't have to assume. The reality is that we should not be making assumptions about folks' gender identity based on their gender expression. When I say gender expression, I mean the fact that I'm wearing earrings or makeup or that I have painted nails. Those are things that indicate my gender expression, as feminine, but they don't tell you what my actual gender identity is. My gender identity is who I know myself to be in my head. And we just have to stop ourselves from assuming gender identity based on gender expression. And so in order to do that, we have to be folks who are curious. We have to be looking for that information and giving people the opportunity to share that information with us so that we're not making those assumptions. So I would absolutely recommend that on every intake form, there's an opportunity to share pronouns. I also would say if you're having if you're meeting someone for the first time, or if it's your first phone call with them, when you introduce yourself, share your pronouns. I always say that the best way to break the ice on pronouns is by sharing yours. So just introduce yourself, give your name and your pronouns. One of the things you might have to do, because you don't want to only share your pronouns with the folks that you think might be members of the LGBTQ community, because you'll get it wrong, and you're always going to miss someone. You're always going to miss someone that just completely flew under your radar. So my recommendation is that you give the opportunity to share pronouns to everyone, and that you share your pronouns with everyone. This is probably going to mean that you're going to share your pronouns with folks who are going to be very confused about the fact that you are sharing your pronouns. And so you want to make sure that you understand, and everybody in the office understands why you have that practice, and you have a good way of sharing that and explaining that to folks who aren't part of the LGBTQ community. But I think that's one of the best ways of not misgendering folks from the outset. And then if you do misgender people, I get it. It can be very, very hard especially because we are socialized to use visual cues, that gender expression that we see, as a way to interpret someone's gender identity. So please don't feel bad about that. That is exactly what our society has trained us to do. We're trying to train ourselves out of it. So misgendering someone or making a flub on someone's pronouns is going to happen. I will admit, my wife is non-binary. They use they and them pronouns, but they did not always use they and them pronouns. They did not always identify as non-binary. In fact, when I met them 25 years ago, they identified as female. And so I still get it wrong sometimes and misgender them or use the inappropriate pronoun of she or her when it should be they or them. My best advice: correct yourself immediately, apologize simply, and move on. Don't make a whole big production about it. If they're anything like my wife, it actually makes them more uncomfortable. And then if someone truly, sometimes people will use they or she pronouns or they or he pronouns. If they are offering you both pronouns, take that as a sincere offer, and do feel free to use both pronouns. If they put they first, whichever pronoun they put first is probably the pronoun they prefer, but it also indicates that they're not going to be truly upset if you use the second pronoun that they offer.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. For NALA, we would love to provide more information to the paralegals, not only with NALA, but across the country. So what links and resources are available for paralegals to learn more about the LGBTQ community and about Equality Ohio?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. We'd love for everyone to visit our website, equalityohio.org. And there you will see a link to our legal clinic. That's where you'll find information on the areas of law that we practice, as well as other things that we offer. You'll also see a link there to our attorney referral network that is open to paralegals. So if you are interested in learning more about serving LGBTQ plus folks, please join our attorney referral network at that link. In the legal clinic section of our website, you're also going to find some CLEs. These CLEs are low cost, and they are an opportunity to learn more about what it takes or what it's like to do trauma-informed lawyering, and also covering the different practice areas of the Equality Ohio Legal Clinic. In particular, I am going to recommend the CLE on cultural humility. I get the chance to teach that CLE. We go very far, we go pretty in depth on the LGBTQ plus community, the lived experience and lived realities, particularly here in Ohio. And it's a great introductory course and gives a great overview there. I also want to say that we've got some great resources at the American Bar Association. They have an Allies Guide to Terminology. There's an How to Be an Ally program toolkit, and a SOGI best practices for promoting LGBT diversity. Those are all great resources. And then if you want to know more about LGBTQ law in particular, there is an LGBTQ Bar Association, and they host a conference every year called Lavender Law that our attorneys like to go to. And then finally, if you are interested in learning more about the state of LGBTQ rights or experience in the United States, I am going to recommend the Movement Advancement Project, or MAP for short. And then I'm also going to recommend the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law. They have done some amazing work and research across the country and in Ohio on the realities of being LGBTQ and what that means for the LGBTQ population and how it relates to our rights in the legal system.
Thank you, Siobhan. On behalf of NALA and the DEI committee, we thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge today, educating us about the LGBTQ+ issues and providing resources. We will be including links that were discussed in today's episode in the show notes below. NALA offers many opportunities for professional development and networking. Please check our website for more information at www.nala.org. We thank you for joining us today on this episode of NALA Talks. Please join us for our next episode of NALA Talks, a microlearning series presented by the DEI Committee of NALA. Until next time.